InnerZension Radio.
And welcome to InnerZension Radio. I'm Chris McCleary, your host, our first live radio show. And I'm excited about tonight because we have the one, the only Kelly Lydick. Did I pronounce the last name correctly?
It's Lydick.
Lydick. Oh, crap. Okay. But
That's okay.
this is going to be a treat. And remember, InnerZension Radio is all about trying to achieve a state of inner peace. And we had on episode number 1, we had Rad Owl from Reddit Dreams come on and teach us about the importance of sleep and dreams. So that meme continues. I'm not backing down from the importance of that. In fact, we're going to get into dream incubation, and you're going to see just how important it is from a personal side, but also a collective side. And it's been said before that, I think it was Robert Moss said it, that if we don't get back to our dreaming nature, we are going to die off. It's that critical. So welcome, Kelly, to InnerZension Radio.
Hi, Chris. I'm so glad to chat with you tonight.
How does it feel to be the first live interviewee on InnerZension Radio?
It's really exciting. I love it. It's really great.
I'm looking at your bio, and it almost looks like you're an Enneagram 3, because we have a meditation facilitator, a Reiki master, crystal Reiki master, past life healer, animal Reiki master, gateway dreaming coach, all these workshops. You have several books, writing or magazine articles and whatnot, and all these different associations. Give us a little flavor, Kelly, for where you came from and how you became you.
Sure. I appreciate you asking. So I started my career in writing and publishing, actually. I went to college for creative writing and literature and realized that I also had an interest in spiritual topics. And then it was once I actually had kind of a health crisis of my own that I really turned inward and started to make some changes in my personal life to facilitate healing and facilitate regeneration of health. And in doing so, that really helped me to dig deeper into things like the past life healing and the gateway dreaming, namely. And so from there, by that time, I had gotten my master's degree in writing and consciousness, creative writing and consciousness. So really looking at, the psychology of creative writing, or the psychology of character, and the psychology of readership, and what it means to create works that are believable, from a creative standpoint. So with that in mind, what I did was I created a hybrid workshop called Writing the Dream Time. And that really took a deep look at how people can mine their dream content for creative work. And then from there, I think things just continued to unfold, and I just followed my interests and also, the needs of my clients. I see clients one-on-one a lot. I do teach workshops still, but the majority of my work is one-on-one work with clients. And so I'm facilitating for them, not just with their dream symbolism, but also real life strategies to implement so that they can, live the life that they really desire.
That sounds profound. And are dreams just a segment of this, or are dreams like the major portion of your work with the clients?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, primarily when I work with clients, I'm working specifically with dreams. We do use the incubation technique a lot, almost in every session, depending on what's happening with a client. And then from there, we actually build a script. I help the client build a script for the incubation process. And that is aimed at really looking at what Jung would call the shadow, and how to open up some of the content of the shadow and bring it into consciousness so that we can stop, catering to maybe a false belief or unconscious behavior, or, anything that someone really wants to change that's been a repetitive pattern of theirs. We can typically unlock that pretty quickly using the dreamscape and using the incubation process.
which we are really very much going to get into the whole dream incubation, the importance of it, and how to do it, and why we need to
Mm-hmm.
do it. But for now, I was going to try and connect the past life into this. Or is that also channeled through the dreams, or do you use other methods like hypnotherapy?
I'm not a hypnotherapist, but I do sometimes look at dream content in the context of past lives and what sometimes comes up. I think I see that more often with people who are more adept dreamers, or someone per se who's been using the incubation technique for a while. Um, that being said, it's usually because people have worked through some healing processes, have gained some conscious awareness through the incubation process, and then they're able to dig kind of a layer deeper as a consequence of that.
So you do layered dream incubations then, based on what you're seeing, say in this dream period. You learn a little bit from that. You get a few more patterns in there, and then you start collecting incubations or start creating a like an affirmation, a request for another dream to explain
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, it's usually in the form of a question.
An
Mm-hmm.
iterative process. I did that in
Yes.
my Master of Art in Transpersonal Studies with Henry Reed's method, and it was a 30-day iterative dream incubation. And we
Mm-hmm.
started with a problem,
Yep.
and this vexing problem that you have, and basically you have a series of dreams, and no matter what they are, you honor those and write them down, even though it doesn't seem like they have anything to do with your topic. And you
Right.
look for patterns, and you look for commonalities across the dreams, and you interpret it in his specific method, and then from the results there you do another week. It's basically 4 weeks worth, and it's iterative. So by the time you end, you might have a whole different problem that you now realize is more important than the problem that you started with, but you also have the solution.
Right.
So now, when we get into your book, this
Mm-hmm.
latest book is Dream Incubation for Greater Self Awareness. It's a handbook. It's got chock full of information that like what was it? Robert Vandecastle took like 400 pages to stuff in, and you were somehow able to assimilate all that stuff into a shorter packet, and that's why I love it. It's a nice, quick summary of all the different theories, not all of the theories, but several of the most important theories.
Mm-hmm.
What was the inspiration behind this book?
Yeah. So things really, I think I really wanted to thing that was easy to read, digestible, quickly accessible, that didn't feel too, academically cumbersome. I really wanted people to use it as a handbook as it's intended. It's also the counterpart to a Udemy course that I designed of the same name that folks can take, and look at and listen to the lectures, the recorded lectures that I put together, which hew closely to the book, but not exactly, and use that process and learn the process so that they can start a practice or accelerate the current practice they have for dreams to really move forward with whatever challenge they're dealing with, or whatever I'll say issue they want greater insight on, although it's not necessarily a negative thing. It could just be something that's not in awareness. So
Mm-hmm.
the reason why I put it together is I really again wanted somebody to have it in their hand on their computer, be able to use it and use it right away and start implementing it, and do not pass go kind of things. I didn't want it to be cumbersome.
Mm-hmm. What sorts of problem, or what sorts of reasons do we do dream incubation? What do you
Mm-hmm.
teach?
It's interesting. When I see with my clients, I see all different kinds of things, but what I notice is that typically the incubation process is similar to what you're saying with your experience with um, Henry Reed, in that once we start doing the incubation process, it typically does reveal something that's deeper, like peeling the layers of the onion, proverbially speaking. So when we start the incubation process, we may have one thing in mind, and then we end up looking at something that's deeper. And what I found is that it actually leads people right to whatever it is that their core, kind of their core issue or their core characterology, or the core, for the core wounding, we would say, right, of their life and their character structure and their psychological makeup. So why it's exciting to me is because I feel like this process really zeroes in and gets to the heart of things quite quickly. I've seen people and heard of people that, they spend 10 years maybe in therapy with a therapist. And not that talk therapy is not necessarily effective, but when you can look at dreams and use the dreams, I'll say, as a way of coming at an issue from a very detached standpoint, I find that accelerates the process, because it's almost like when you look at dreams, there's one step removed. You're one step. The dreams are your dreams, of course. They come from your psychology. They come from your emotional body. They come from past lives. That's true. But people have a tendency to look at dreams as something external to themselves. And so it's easier from an emotional standpoint to analyze the symbols of the dreams and kind of not take them so personally, right? And that I found is really what helps to accelerate the process, because in talk therapy, it's often a lot of emotional work, emotional expression. And so there's quite a bit of attachment, both mentally and emotionally, to whatever issue is being discussed. With the dreams, it's kind of like holding it in an arm's length to be able to look at it from a 360-degree view without feeling emotionally triggered or upset with yourself or overly critical, or, and any of the things that come up when we're working on core issues: blame, shame, issues of worthiness or value, issues of confidence, all of the types of core things that you would see when someone is working through evolving their personality, if you will. So that's why it's exciting to me, because I find that it is so rapid. The results are rapid.
I couldn't agree more. I actually did some dream therapy. Well, I actively do some dream therapy, and I've noticed some, like, just an initial impression is that the stronger the dream, so like the more traumatic the dream or more traumatic the experience, the quicker and bigger the insight, and thus the bigger change to life. And what I've noticed is that, like you said, talking through to the subconscious, there's so many layers of filtration and protection, emotional protection. Hey, what does the therapist think of me? I feel judged. I feel like I can't really say. But a lot of this is subconscious for a reason, because it's better down there. The conscious doesn't want to know all this stuff. Well, dreams are naked in a way. They're exposing your subconscious. And in a brilliant way. A lot of times there's these metaphors. You don't know exactly what they mean until you start working with someone to kind of resolve the meanings of these things. But profoundly important, and they work in metaphors very much so. All right. So anyone who cites me in a book gets an automatic cool points and gets to be on InnerZension Radio. So I got cited in her book, which got me so excited that I got cited. And and it was about Project August. You liked Project August, correct? Is that why?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was so fascinating, and so in terms of what you're saying, the collective conscious or the collective unconscious, therefore, it was really revealing. Sometimes I think that because we place ourselves often in the context of some of our predecessors, in terms of like the psychological canon, I think that we forget about how dreams are actually tied to the modern world, and I thought that Project August was such a really, really profound way to look at dreams, and how dreams are really influencing not just the individual's daily life, but also as a collective, the things that we may not always talk about with another person, or we may not always see, or the things that are not obvious, on a day-to-day basis, because we're going about our individual lives and, everybody has a tendency to get caught up in whatever it is that's happening in the present moment, which is great. But sometimes it creates a little bit of a myopic view in terms of where we're placing ourselves as individuals within our larger community. And so that was a huge reason why I thought it was so fascinating, because it was a great reminder that we are also very connected, even when we're not feeling connected, or even when it's not obvious, I guess.
That for those of you who don't know, Project August is an example of collective dream incubation. And that's why I want to bring it up really quick now. I don't want to steal the thunder, but we're going to end up getting into individual dream incubation, which Kelly will highlight that part of it. But Project August was a collective effort, and we were going to see whether or not we can incubate dreams to predict the future. And it was in 2014. It was August of the target month was August 2014. So we started dreaming in April up to about July, and I published predictive headlines for August, and we had 119 headlines, and 101 of them came true, and with an average accuracy of about four out of 5. And so here's an example of 4 out of 5 was one actual predictive headline was an outbreak claims 1,200 lives in eastern Montana. And the actual headline, and you gotta think, if all the dreamers are dreaming about an outbreak and it's around Montana, like, well, I mean, I have to honor that. Like in April, I think it was predicted in May. And by then Ebola was nowhere on the horizon. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody was talking about outbreaks. So I felt like this was just going to be crazy, stupid, but I went ahead and honored it. And I said that there's going to be 1,200 people taken by an outbreak. And so lo and behold, in August, the actual headline was Ebola claims 1,200 lives. And it was in Sri Lanka, not eastern Montana. So like the location was way off. That's why we got a decrement. But how the heck does the dreamers know that it's 1,200 lives and an outbreak? 2 pinpoint accuracies. It was just phenomenal. And so details like that, and then you got some obvious other ones that, sometimes you see the world or the predictive headline comes true, but the headline wasn't really all that precise. So like it might have come true in any year, but this one, there's no way that it's just too much of a coincidence. So anyway, it wasn't a scientific study. It was more of a qualitative kind of study, but it was very exciting. I got to present that at the International Association for the Study of Dreams. So that is, and the dream incubation process was, each person had the same statement that they would incubate the dream with. And they said, I will dream about the biggest headline happening in August of 2014. Everyone had to say that. And then they would go to sleep and then jot down the dream and put it up on the website. So that was the dream incubation. So now that's pretty impressive with collective concern, but it's just as powerful, if not more, on an individual basis. And that's why Kelly comes to us today to how do we get to inner peace through individual dream incubation?
Yes.
That might be too big of a topic for me to drop that off to you, but where do you want to start with dream incubation? Like how to do it or why to do it? We're kind of discussing.
Yeah, I think we should tell people, how to do the incubation process, which is really simple. And I do think that there are some maybe personal variations of some of the minutia around it, but the way that I teach it and the way that I feel that it works well is quite simple. Essentially, you have your statement or your question, and it could be either or. Something like what you said, tonight I will dream about the biggest headline. That's more of a statement. Something that would be more of a question could be, what would be the best next step for my career? You know, broad question, but a question nevertheless. And I would have someone write that question or statement just on a small piece of paper and have some kind of container handy, a container with a lid specifically. I like having the lid because I think it contains the energy of the question and the energy of the incubation process. And I typically tell people to put that container with that lid somewhere on their nightstand next to them on either side of the bed where they have a table. I also tell them never to put it on the ground, because when we're dreaming, we want to be closer to the astral plane, not closer to the earth and grounded. We want to have access to the higher levels of self. So I would never place the incubation container anywhere on the ground. So now you have your container, now you have your question or your
Does it
statement.
matter if the container is metal or wood or cardboard?
I think that the stronger, sturdier materials contain better just by consequence of their molecular structure, if we can think of it that way. I don't ever recommend clear containers, plastic jar, you know, a glass jar, like a mason jar or something like that. I don't ever recommend something that's clear. I want something that's solid, that's contained, that has the lid, that feels sturdy and feels like a true container, not just something that's holding space and taking up space. And then before someone would retire at the end of the night, I would have them take that piece of paper, that question, and sit on the edge of the bed with feet not touching the ground and meditate on that question or that statement. Say it either aloud or to, you know, internally to the self 3 times, and then place that piece of paper in the container, replace the lid, put the container back on the bedside shelf, and then immediately retire to sleep. That's really the last thing that someone should do. For instance, you wouldn't want to do the incubation or meditate on your question, then get up and go have a snack or brush your teeth or get a glass of water, do any of that. You want the incubation to be the very last thing that you do, so that it's leaving an impression on your subconscious as you fall asleep. And then as you know, as you're laying there and you have your eyes closed, it could be good to meditate on it depending on the person. For some, you know, if the person is good at non-attachment, I would say that they might not necessarily need to or want to continue to meditate on the question or statement. But, you know, that would be a personal choice. And then retire to sleep, allow yourself to fall asleep naturally. And then once you wake up, journal whatever dream that you had. Excuse me. I do use, with my clients, I do use a set of 2 questions. It's kind of a binary method that I use. And so what I do like to have people correlate is which question or statement is used once they receive a certain dream. So in other words, I want to know what was being incubated on, so I can see the relationship between the question or the statement and the results that occur in the dream. So for those folks, you know, who haven't used the incubation process, that would be a simplified way to do it. And then, you know, for those who may have tried it before, I think, again, some of the nuances might be a cool thing to try, like the part about not keeping your feet on the ground as you're doing the incubation, or the specifics with the container that I recommend may be different from what other folks have used in their own practice. So trying some of these nuances could change the results or increase or accelerate results as well.
What do you think about like affirmations? I've heard some people talk about it is a game of reprogramming the subconscious, since dreams are highly subconscious or mostly subconscious. Is if you habituate anything. So, for example, if I want to incubate a certain type of dream, you could maybe a predictive dream or maybe a problem dream. I can talk about that to myself all day long. I will dream about XYZ. I will dream about XYZ. So you're training your mind to dream about XYZ. What do you think about that?
I would say my answer is kind of twofold to that. I have very specific beliefs and very specific ways that I have clients implement affirmations.
Hard-lined. You're
Very
hardline.
hard. I am very hardline when it comes to affirmations, because I feel like affirmations are often misused, and I feel like when an affirmation is misused, it can therefore be ineffective and can actually bring about maybe the reverse or something altogether different. What I don't like to see people do is affirm something to try and trick their mind. And typically that's the way affirmations are used. In other words, if your affirmation is making one statement all the way over here, but the actual state of your psyche is on the opposite side, there's not really a way to bridge that gap. And so what ends up happening is sort of a cognitive dissonance when the affirmation is not genuinely matched to the person's state of mind in the present moment.
When you're kind of in the middle of that, you've kind of changed a little bit, but not all the way over. So now you got both extremes.
Right, right. And then
us
I think
humans
that
don't like cognitive dissonance. Holding two different ideas, we have to choose one or the other.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't think it's useful. And I think that sometimes it can create setbacks or create, with that cognitive dissonance, then, the mind with its monkey mind, right, has a tendency to spin off in other directions or create, maybe a false belief may be created based on the wrongful use of the affirmation, because now the mind is trying to bridge that gap and it can't necessarily do it. And so it just fills in the blank any old way that it can. So I've actually seen faulty beliefs be created when affirmations are not used to the present moment, if you will. So I always use them very specifically. And I don't necessarily think that, the hyped up term, manifestation, right? It's kind of more of like a spiritual buzzword lately, I think, in the last handful of years. I don't necessarily think that affirmations can create a manifestation per se. I don't believe that. I believe more in synchronicity. I believe more in divine design. So that said, I think the second part of your question is, can you incubate throughout the day, essentially? And what happens when we are maybe consciously meditating, even if it's only peripherally throughout the day? I still think that will have an impact on the subconscious mind. Absolutely. So it would be like, I guess it wouldn't be any different than, let's say, watching the same commercial over and over 150 times. Somewhere that the language or the jingle, right, it's going to be embedded in the subconscious mind. So I think that the affirmations or any kind of statement that you would use as a mantra over and over will be embedded somehow in the subconscious. So it's really just a matter of, can we bridge the gap between the subconscious mind and what's happening in the present moment, and how far or how close are those two statements or realities or perceptions, in order to then utilize that to move forward or to make conscious choice to move forward in some way. So I think fullness and the use of it, and having a clear picture of what's happening in the present moment. And then I think it's about using affirmations in a mindful way, right? So that we can use the affirmation to meet the present moment, and then from that present moment, then go forward, without getting bogged down, I guess, in that cognitive dissonance or in a faulty belief or something that's not emotionally resonant, but you're trying to trick your mind to heal your emotions, or any other number of ways that the affirmations can be used.
Now back to the container. I was thinking along the lines of, if a listener is not buying into this idea about the container, I can see that the importance there, even if we're wrong on the energy side of things and the encapsulation of it, or kind of the protection of it, even if we're wrong about all that, to the subconscious, to put it into a chest or a kind of a valued place, makes the importance of it go up. And when the importance goes up, then it kind of rings some bells in the subconscious to manifest some sort of dream along those lines. Do you agree with that?
I do. And I also, at the same time, I also think of things kind of on a quantum level, right? We know that when we think about the molecular structure of, let's say, oak wood, we know that it's very dense material because the wood is very hard, right? If you were knocking on the door, which means that those molecules are really, really tight knit. Something like plastic per se is not really, because it's not natural. It's a manufactured petroleum product. It doesn't really breathe. It's not an oxygenated kind of thing. It doesn't have, although carbon is at its base, I think on a vibrational level, it's like a dead material, you know, it's like it's not breathing. Whereas something like an oak wood small container or chest has a tendency to retain its living energetic imprint. And so I tend to think of it that way.
Okay.
And maybe that's a little bit too esoteric.
Well, I can go even esoteric on you beyond this. And in the law of one material, which I think I might do an episode on the law of one, but or maybe have a guest on to discuss it some more. But they talk about the power of a pyramid. And I'm looking at this container going, if we really want stronger energy consolidated on that particular topic, then we would do a four-sided pyramid. It can't be metal. You know, they talk about the materials that they can make their pyramids in, but it translates directly over to Egypt and the Egyptian pyramids and where they placed their rooms, the king's room, the queen's room, all that are placed specifically for maximum, and one of them was healing, and then the other one was maximum like transcendence or spiritual growth and that kind of thing, or connection to this other side or whatever. So, but that one would be, well, it could be either closed or open. They said it doesn't really matter, and it increases the, I don't know what kind of energy, but the energy. So for example, like some sort of plant, if you put it into a pyramid, would grow bigger. This is all theoretical. But according to them, it's real. So, all right. Now, lucid dreaming. Do you go into lucid dreaming at all? How does that work into your dream incubation? And this is kind of paradoxical because lucid dreaming, for those of you who are new to lucid dreaming, is when you know that you're in the dream as you're dreaming. And so if you're incubating a dream, it kind of sounds counterintuitive. Why don't you just go into the dream and create that which you want? Well, there's different levels of lucidity. Anyway, I'll let you kind of go with the lucid dreaming idea and see what we come up with there.
Yeah, I think I touch on it just briefly in the book, but the book doesn't really give a how-to on incubating specifically to invoke the lucid state. Really more of my approach is about mining the subconscious and mining the shadow to bring that content to light. And so the greater self-awareness piece is really coming from the standpoint of looking at the shadow and drawing that material out. But I do think that if one were to incubate specifically for a lucid dream to experience the lucid dream, I think that's absolutely totally possible. And I have had some people report that that's what they want to do. I think what you're saying is true in terms of, you know, what are the levels of lucid dreaming, and, you know, is it just a matter of having control of your dreams? Is it looking into and experiencing, you know, another dimension per se? Or I know Robert Moss, another gentleman who I cited in my book, he often talks about the dream state being a reflection of a parallel life, right?
I love that.
Yeah, coming from the standpoint that there is no time, that everything is happening simultaneously. The dream is actually a life that's happening in another dimension. So I think that we absolutely can incubate to have those experiences. And I think breaking beyond or breaking through the paradox comes in when you hit that hypnagogic state and you are going into detachment. So it's kind of like doing the incubation process and then letting it go and just letting whatever is going to happen. And then once you get to the point of lucidity, then you're lucid, and then you're kind of co-creating in the moment of the dream. So
or
I think
hopefully There's nothing that is more frustrating than becoming lucid but not being able to do anything about it. I know
Right.
a few people, a couple of my clients were very astute, lucid dreamers until the shadow figure shows up, and then they're helpless and they can't do anything. But other than that, they can fly anywhere they want, do it, create anything they want until the shadow guy shows up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I would think that part of that is because the shadow is sort of that anchor into, the current body, current psyche, current moment of time.
Something very dark in that space of subconscious material.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of
Absolutely.
pulls you back in. Mm-hmm.
It's a self-sabotage mechanism.
Can be.
Now, some people would say it's more like a higher self or soul-based wall that you need to, for some reason, experience this shadow guy or this scary situation or this particular problem that you can't solve or whatever, and for some sort of soul growth. What do you think about that?
I think that can be true. I think when we come from a place of optimism and can look at really anything, no matter what it is, no matter what the challenge is, as an opportunity to evolve, I think that can be totally possible, really in any context, whether it's waking or dreaming. And sometimes it's hard, depending on the challenge or whatever it is, that someone is facing. Sometimes it's hard to always be in that space of accepting the experience as an opportunity for growth. It's easy to either self-sabotage or go into kind of a why me or a victim mentality or a misunderstanding, right? Because if we look at the divine order or the metaphysical versus the physical, they don't often appear to be aligned.
Now, how often do you have to work through frustration where you're incubating a certain type of dream or a problem, a solution to the problem, and then something bizarre comes in, and maybe night after night you're trying to get this dream? How do you handle that frustration level that you're not getting what you want, or maybe you don't get any dreams? Okay, well, I guess I'll keep talking. We have a cough attack. um, I work personally with the incubation process, and like I said, at Atlantic University, and I did just that. And my answer would have been, if I was asked to this question, if you're getting constantly different dreams than what you're wanting, they seem to be stupid. They seem to be nothing of what you asked for. I'm still writing it down. And here's one of the answers is that if you look at the dream as stupid, then you'll just keep getting more stupid dreams, and you're not going to be getting the solutions that you wanted, that you're asking for. That's number one, is to, no matter what you get, honor it by writing it down, by really curiously investigating it and acting like it's a really valuable dream. And guess what? It probably is a really important dream. It's just that it looks stupid on the outside, or that's just your perception. So don't look at the dreams as stupid. And then the next one is, I lost my train of thought. Are you back yet?
I'm sorry about that.
No problem. It's still kind of choked up there.
I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold too, and sometimes you just get
Okay.
that little bit of a tickle in the back of your throat.
One more thing is looking for, in these various dreams, just keep waiting, keep enduring, keep writing down your dream, and over time you'll see a pattern developing. And it's probably going to be a metaphor. You're not going to see, red shirt, red shirt, red shirt, red shirt. You'll see something else that's metaphoric, but is the same topic, particularly in emotion. You'll see a patterned emotion coming up in all the dreams, whether or not it's you as the character, or maybe the other person is angry, but maybe anger is across the board. Well, that's very significant. Always look for the emotional content underneath. All right, Kelly,
I agree.
your turn.
No, I agree. I could agree completely. And what I was going to say is that whenever I have someone who's coming up against, I call it an ebb and flow, right? When they're kind of in the ebb and the dreams are not seeming to flow. I always just say, don't get attached to it. Go into that space of non-attachment and just let the space open up. I think if we try and overanalyze it too much, or start to become critical, or trying to incubate over and over and over the same question, there's a reason why there's maybe a dry spell, or the dream doesn't seem to make sense. But again, continuing what you said, continuing to write it down, continuing to look at the symbols, continuing to even incubate through a period of having no dreams will reveal a pattern, as you say.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is to look at the question that you're asking. And there's possibly the question is just too broad, too open, or the question itself might have a metaphor in it that the dream or the subconscious can't really work out, because I don't have a quick example, but I don't know, some word that you're using means two different things, and maybe that's why you're getting bizarre dreams, is because it's not clear to the subconscious what it is you're asking for. So
Right.
maybe rephrase the question for the next one.
Yep, I agree with that as well. Mm-hmm. Going back to what you were saying in terms of an iterative process. And so when I work with clients, I always do I do it in kind of a binary way. I prompt them with specific language for two different questions. And one question is actually geared specifically for the subconscious mind. And then the other question is actually geared towards the conscious mind. So in a coaching session, let's say, when we're talking about a dream and we're working through the symbolism and we're uncovering either the emotional pattern, like you mentioned, or kind of an underlying current or a theme, now that theme or that emotional piece is known. It's more known in the conscious mind. And so the subconscious question would be intended to dig a little bit deeper into uncovering more about what was revealed. And then the conscious question would be looking at furthering it from the conscious state, almost like you would do, during waking time, but still inquiring through the dream. And so it's kind of like coming at the theme or the issue or the process from both sides of the coin, so that there's a higher incidence, I think, of getting the answer that you want, or getting an appropriate answer to the question. It may not be what you want, but it may be an answer, which is really what people want. They're seeking resolution to something.
In all this work with helping people incubate dreams, is there one thing that across the board just really accelerates people's satisfaction levels, or getting the solution that they wanted? One or two things that really expedite this process?
If someone is doing it on their own, I think a couple different things. Making sure, again, going back to the feet not being on the ground as they incubate. Okay. I think that's one. I've seen people drink a half a glass of water right before they incubate. Something about the fluidity of the water, right? Because as we drink water, it assimilates into our body, which is mostly made of water. And I think it also it stirs the digestion process as we sleep. So there's something to that. I also think it's about, framing or phrasing the question in the right way, and working with, as you say, a question that's not too broad, but something that can encompass the intention for resolution or for awareness. And so those, I think, are probably the three top things I would say, are the three key things.
How often are you incubating for your own life? Are you doing it weekly, or maybe just monthly?
I do it probably a couple times a week, maybe twice a week. I think once a person gets into a routine with their dream practice, when I'm working actively with clients, I typically tell them to incubate every single night. And if they don't get a dream, that's fine. Just go to the next night. And since I work with them in kind of a binary way, I also allow them to use the questions however they see fit. So the time frame between sessions would be 2 weeks. So a person could use one question for 1 week and the other question for the other week. Or if they wanted to do alternating, one day one question, one day the other, and just go back and forth. So when we're actively working on something and using that information to catalyze or transform in the waking life, I always say do it every day, regardless of whether you're dream. And then if it seems like you're really coming up against some kind of a dry point, dry spell, or you're not getting any dreams, then pause, put the incubation down, and then come back to it when it feels right to the person. Once you've kind of established, I think, that routine or that pattern, I think it's not necessarily needed to do it every day, but someone could do it a couple times a week and still have the same kind of resolution, because in a way you're kind of syncing up your conscious and your subconscious mind to work together to be present in the present moment, right? So in that way, I think a flow really is established when a person is practicing the incubation technique over longer periods of time, months, 3, 4, 6 months or longer, and incorporating it into their practice that way.
Directly related to the information that Rat Owl had in the first episode is becoming one, becoming reconnected, but your dreams are telling you where the conflict is. And you mentioned it. It was the conflict between unconscious and conscious mind. Making that connection is required for inner peace. And in order to get there, we do have to tap into the subconscious. And the greatest biohack known to man is that dream process, or for the subconscious mind. And then obviously the conscious mind, we should be pretty good at. Mindfulness and meditation can improve that, but it's all about the dreams. It's a vast sea of unconscious material. All right, this book by Kelly, Dream Incubation for Greater Self-Awareness. And in there, you're going to get tips for rapid results, how to set the intentions. You're going to get the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, a history of dream practices, brain activity during the sleep. You're going to get a lot of material. And where do they find this book, Kelly?
It's this book is actually only available in digital form, so you can purchase it on Amazon if you have a Kindle, or you can purchase a PDF download from my website, which is just my name, www.kellylydick.com.
All right, and we will have in the final show notes, we'll have those links available, and we'll have the preview of the book at InnerZension.com radio, and Kelly will get the proceeds, but we'll also get a little cut. It's not any more to the customer, but it helps both of us out. And then where do they go to get some dream help? And, is that the same website?
Yep. People can just navigate to my website. I do have a contact form. If someone wants to email me directly, it's just kelly@kellylydick.com. And I'm happy to answer, further questions about the coaching process and demystify that a little bit. I always say it's not for the faint of heart. So person has to be ready to do the work if they want to dig in.
Now, what about this Udemy? Is that how you pronounce it? Or Udemy, the academic thing that you did?
I call it Udemy. I'm not sure. Yeah, I call it Udemy. I don't know.
So is that still active?
Course. Yeah. Yes.
Now, where do they find you there?
Yes. So if you go to Udemy, udemy.com, and actually this is really cool too. If you sign up for the course, you actually will get the book as a bonus. So if you take the course, you'll be able to download a PDF of the book from your course dashboard. And it's just the same title. The course is the same title as the book.
Okay, cool. And we'll have that in the show notes as well. I'm wondering if we could do a periodic dream incubation process on the radio show. And I'm thinking about how that'll work. We're going to have Dr. Diane Dreher periodically on for short periods of yin, yang, and Tao talk. And so we might be able to do something like dream incubation with that process as well.
Great. We
can incubate how the collective is doing, just like we did in Project August. Now I'm thinking like an aquarium. All right, Kelly, it was a pure pleasure to have you on the show, especially live. And Thanks for remembering the mute button. That was good of you.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. We were able to roll with it. We had a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, good. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, and really appreciate your insight and your perspective. And it's just really great, really, really fun. I always enjoy these talks.
Dreams are vast, and we're going to have much more dreams on InnerZension Radio. So just hang on. And Kelly, thanks again, and we'll look forward to the next discussion.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here on InnerZension Radio. We have lots of guests coming up, and too many to describe here, but we are going to have a little bit of mix of podcasts and a little bit of mix of InnerZension Radio. So stick with us. We're all over YouTube. We've got the website, of course, InnerZension.com. All of the stuff will be there, but the live stuff will be here on YouTube. So go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell so that you get notified of the special live sessions. And with that, I just appreciate all your support and shares and comments and everything else. Have a great week, everybody.